You guys.
This is your 18.
This is my overlighting.
This is your 1800s.
Yes.
No,
I
I
just
dress
borrowed
like
it from
this
the
all the
costume truck. Yeah. I do, but I love vintage clothing and I love past eras of costumes and hair and makeup and design. My mother did most of my clothes growing up, and so I studied all of the past Vogue pattern books, and it's really fun to kind of finally find a role where I can use some of that senseless knowledge.
So are we going to find out about Lucy's family over the next few episodes or throughout the season?
I think it's, there's going to be things that come about every episode. Have you guys seen 1 and 2 or the first? Okay.
1 and 2, yes.
So you find more things in episode 2. That Lucy's sister has gone missing after they got back from the Hindenburg. You find out in episode 2 after the Abe Lincoln assassination that she has a fiance that she's never met.
That was fun.
Yeah, and then episode 3, you'll keep finding more because now she's propelled on this journey because now she wants to get her sister back. And really, I think in episode 4 is going to be the crisis for Lucy about that she has to, that her why. She's trying to figure out her why because she's a teacher, she's a historian, but what I think is interesting too is that Flynn has presented that maybe she's not even who she knows that she is. Everything that she knows about herself. I think there's more to the story with Rittenhouse, how he has this journal that is Lucy's writing. I think that'll be the long game is who is Lucy Preston, which is going to be a huge question on the show.
Coming off Mad Men in season 5.
Yeah, this is just like it. This is similar tone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very.
What's it like though? Doing the network show, with all the heaviness of the prime time, the ratings.
Yeah.
What's it like? Is it difficult?
It's nice. It is. Here's the thing. What we're doing right now is impossible. We're making a new movie every single week on a network show with completely new sets, completely new costumes, and for the better part, besides our leads, completely new actors every single week, and that is very difficult to pull off. We're pulling off if Game of Thrones was changing every week, but on a network show. So there are challenges, but this is a really strong and esteemed group to be going through that with. And honestly, that was part of why I wanted to do the show. I wanted to challenge myself and to do something that people hadn't seen me do before. There's room to be very silly. I get to be very silly. There's room for physical comedy. There's room for extreme intellect. There's room for broad family, viewing. And I just hadn't gotten an opportunity to do that before, and it felt like time to do something different. But it is hard. Good hard. If it wasn't hard, why would we do it?
We talked with Malcolm about this a little bit. The show doesn't really pull any punches when it comes to exploring the prejudice that different marginalized people would face in history, and obviously as a woman, it's expected you're going to get your fair share of that. What's it like as an actor and as a person putting yourself into those situations voluntarily?
It's interesting. I think it's really important to do. We have to honor, obviously being on Mad Men, I know a bit about that. Part of what made that show so amazing was the authenticity of that and seeing how the characters were reacting to that over time. But obviously Lucy is a contemporary character going back in time and trying not to blow her cover. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, they're undercover agents going back in time now, and part of her job is making sure that they abide by the customs and the speech patterns, that the knuckleheads that she has to go back in time with, that they don't blow the history cover. And I say that with extreme love. But it's kind of like the Three Amigos, you're all trying to Three Amigo your way through time. But so we had the Lincoln episode that's going to air tomorrow night. Thank you. Then after that is our 1962 episode, and Lucy goes undercover as a waitress in 1962 in Vegas, and there was a scene, and I felt as when I was I was serving in this room, and it's this kind of big number. I don't want to ruin it, but. She's serving, and I was and then this guy kind of harasses me, and I was I think he would, wouldn't he have just totally grabbed me, slapped me really hard on the thing? We have to address that and then see Lucy's reaction, but we want to build it over time. I think that Lucy's smart enough to know that she's got to keep her cover, but that's part of the conflict is when does she say something, and why does she say something, and when's going to be the right time, and seeing her deal with that, and her always having to be the secretary or the waitress or the this, I mean, it's going to come up over time, but I think that we have to really earn it and not we can't be too light about it, and it's got to be consistent.
Right.
Hey, buddy.
Continued success to you.
Oh, thank you.
Don't forget what we talked about.
Okay. Lincoln. Stamp of approval. He is he's an actual historian. I don't know if you guys know that, but he travels. He's like the world's leading Lincoln, not only impersonator, but he teaches history, and he is a historian himself, so it's fun to have him.
That's awesome. What can you tell us about the dynamic between Lucy, Wyatt, and Rufus, how it's going to evolve this season?
It's so interesting because Matt and Malcolm and I didn't know each other at all when we got cast in the part. There was no pre-existing relationship, and that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you work with people, you know people, not at all. And then we are thrown into making this gargantuan pilot in Vancouver in the rain with special effects and and I think it's so beautiful how organically it's just progressed. Wyatt and Lucy and Rufus are doing is they're thrown into the situation, complete strangers, and then have to have each other's back. And I couldn't have been more grateful for those two. They're really, really awesome. But I do think it's it's the characters and us together. And you're gonna see them bicker, argue. They all have very different viewpoints about why they're on their mission. Wyatt he's avenging a past. Lucy now has lost her sister. Rufus just in general doesn't ever want to go back in time. So, and also it has a secret of his own. He's been, as you see, he's recording us, and when that will come out, and yet they keep having to go on these missions. And that's probably one of my favorite parts of the show is seeing these characters deal with all of this.
One of the things you did with on the second episode with Florent's character was something you didn't share with Rufus or Wyatt in terms of having some insight into what his motivations might truly be.
Yeah,
and I think the audience is starting to realize that he's not just pure antagonist.
No. I think it's much deeper, for Flynn and for Flynn and Lucy, and I think that Lucy is feeling very divided because she doesn't want to believe him and doesn't want to put the guys in any danger and doesn't want to give it any power, and yet she's also not telling him.
Yeah, why keep that secret?
I think, again, they just met. They're still getting to know each other. They've been on 2 missions. They've known each other 3 days. And so I think what the information that Flynn is giving Lucy is very scary for her. And I think she truly doesn't want to believe it, but it will get dealt with and it will come out.
What can you tell us about the appeal of time travel for you coming on board the show?
I don't know, because I loved Back to the Future and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Those were kind of my 2 time travel movies that I guess that I responded to the most. I just think I know, particularly in this day and age, we want to change. I know that I feel very strongly that there's a lot of things we want to change about our future. And we can't predict the future, but the only way that we can really change our future is to get to know our past. And I think a lot about, I think regret is a big thing for human beings of if I had just done that differently, if I had just this, that, or the other. And so I think time travel makes it a reality. It kind of puts you in a situation where you get the opportunity, but that's too much power for human beings to have. So I like seeing characters being given a lot of power and then a lot of responsibility that comes with it. But I think time travel just starts to dive into it, and I think now, particularly, especially when they talk about the science and all the scientists that they've been talking to and NASA and everybody, it doesn't, are we that far off from it? I'm not sure. And so it's feeling closer and closer as our technology develops and as we're even more connected across the world. I think we're feeling more disconnected in other ways. And just the idea of being able to go back in time and change something or not is, I think, part of the appeal.
Was there something that you learned in your having to dole out some of the historic knowledge of your character? Is there something that you learned that in one of the episodes that you've done so far that you were like, I didn't know that?
I learned something every episode. I had no idea that Lincoln was one of 4 men that were supposed to be assassinated. that it was considered a huge failure that just Lincoln was assassinated. It's mind-boggling to me. And it talks about the depths of Booth, and I think it's a great episode. You know, we've got some crazy stuff happening in our political climate, and so I think it's really interesting to go back and like explore that night and like what was going on then. It's like, oh, okay, that was a long time ago, and we're still dealing with some pretty crazy stuff. I learned so much about that every episode. In our Vegas episode, I learned something about JFK and the mob and kind of how they were trading information. I had no idea about our upcoming episode, the moon landing episode. I read it, I was like, no idea there were mathematicians in the basement who were basically like supporting and carrying on and controlling the entire moon landing and really are the unsung heroes. I mean, every episode, that is part of what I think is unique about the show is, yes, it's historical time periods and there's kind of like a costume drama to it and like a fantasy of sorts, but then we're exploring these really amazing things that are true about history and bringing it to light and making those names famous that people kind of usually gloss over. I love that. I love that Eric and Sean, our creators, are committed to doing that. That it's not your typical like, oh, just it's like this small little thing over here that we explore.
Are there historical consultants that work with you guys?
Yes, in the writer's room all the time. They have a historian in the room. And I think they're going to be putting up a blog soon about everything that's 100% true and then where we use things for our fictional purposes. Like, for example, in the Hindenburg episode, there was a photographer, the woman Kate, the character Kate. Her name's not Kate in real life, but there was a photographer who was killed at the Hindenburg, who was following, but it's, they stretched it a little bit, but they still used something that was historically accurate to support that and then used it for fictional purposes.
Do they get with you on details that you do? I noticed a really cool moment in the Abraham Lincoln episode. You accidentally bowed to Lincoln's son, but then later you were curtsying almost as though Lucy was correcting herself.
Yes. Well, that's part of it too. Is I want to know enough so I can do it wrong, and then I can correct myself. Because that's part of the comedy. One of my favorite things about the show is the humor, and also getting caught up in the moment. There's an innocence to Lucy, or a childlikeness to all of this. The wonder that I want Lucy to have on behalf of the audience. I think they're like, I can't imagine if I got to meet Abraham Lincoln. It'd be crazy, So just putting myself in those shoes of wonder is really fascinating. But yes, it's like finding all of those little things to just, and thank you for noticing.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it.